We are raised with a peculiar, almost sacrosanct idea in our culture that helping others is an unequivocal good, the undeniable marker of a virtuous heart. From our earliest days, we are steeped in stories and lessons that equate goodness with self-sacrifice, spirituality with perpetual availability, and love with an endless capacity to say yes. We are taught that to hesitate, to question, to dare to establish a boundary for our own well-being is a sign of a flawed character. That pause, that moment of self-preservation, is too often misinterpreted as selfishness, a fundamental unkindness that stains our moral record. This conditioning runs so deep that we feel a visceral guilt when we consider prioritizing our own energy, as if we are betraying the very purpose of our existence by not being everything for everyone, all of the time. But what if this entire framework, this foundational pillar of our social and spiritual upbringing, is fundamentally backwards? What if our compulsive, reflexive need to rush in and fix, to rescue, to solve, is not the pure expression of love we believe it to be, but rather a subtle and insidious form of interference? Imagine for a moment that every soul is on a curriculum, a unique path designed by life itself to impart crucial lessons through experience. When we constantly intervene, we are like a parent doing a child's homework. We may get a passing grade for them in the short term, but we have robbed them of the knowledge and resilience needed to succeed on their own. This is not love. It is a disruption of the soul's necessary education, a well-intentioned but ultimately harmful act that keeps the other person dependent and stunted. Consider the practical implications of this dynamic. When you repeatedly rescue someone from the natural and logical consequences of their own choices and actions, what are you truly accomplishing? You are not building a stronger individual. You are creating a permanent patient. You are not offering a hand up. You are providing a crutch that weakens their emotional and spiritual muscles over time. By standing as a buffer between them and the hard, unvarnished truths of their existence, you prevent them from encountering the very friction that generates wisdom. This wisdom is not theoretical. It is earned, forged in the fires of disappointment, failure, and discomfort, and by shielding them, you are denying them access to the forge where their own character is meant to be tempered and strengthened. Now, this is not a call to adopt an attitude of cold-hearted indifference or to retreat into a fortress of selfish isolation. That extreme would be just as spiritually impoverished as the mindless self-sacrifice we are questioning. The core issue is not whether we should care for others. The human connection demands that we do. The more profound and nuanced question is how we care, and with even greater importance, who we choose to pour our precious life force into. For our energy is not an infinite resource. It is a sacred, limited currency, and we must invest it with discernment, not simply scatter it to the winds. You see, the world contains certain types of individuals who function as emotional and spiritual black holes. They possess a boundless capacity to absorb your time, your empathy, your resources, and your peace. They take and they take. Their need a bottomless chasm, and no matter how much of yourself you pour into that void, it is never, ever enough to fill it. The true tragedy in this dynamic is not merely that they are taking from you, though that is draining enough. The deeper tragedy is that by continually giving, you are actively preventing them from confronting the emptiness within themselves that drives their constant taking. You are, with the kindest of intentions, obstructing their necessary growth. Therefore, it is essential to learn to recognize these archetypes, not so we can sit in judgment or condemn them from a place of superiority, but so we can protect our own spiritual vitality and, paradoxically, allow them the space to face the very experiences they desperately need in order to awaken. This is an act of tough love for them and for ourselves. It is about shifting from being a constant rescuer to becoming a wise observer, who understands that some paths must be walked alone, and some lessons can only be learned through direct, unmediated encounter with reality. What follows is a guide to 7 such archetypes, a map to help you navigate these draining relationships. The first type we must learn to identify is the chronically lazy. It is absolutely vital to distinguish here between someone who is genuinely struggling against overwhelming odds and someone who has simply surrendered their own agency. A person in a genuine struggle will use your offered help as a stepping stone, a temporary boost they leverage to propel themselves forward, their own effort meeting your assistance halfway. The chronically lazy individual, however, will use your help as a hammock, a comfortable place to recline indefinitely. They have made a quiet internal decision, whether conscious or not, that life is too difficult a burden to bear alone, and that someone else should, and will, carry their weight. The moment you step into the role of helper for this person, you unconsciously accept the mantle of their designated carrier. You become the person they depend on, not because they are physically or mentally incapable of doing for themselves, but because they have learned through experience that if they wait long enough, someone will eventually do it for them. This creates a vicious cycle of dependency, where your help reinforces their passivity, and their passivity invites more of your help, in a downward spiral that enfeebles them and exhausts you. It is a codependent dance where both parties are complicit in the stagnation of one. We can find profound wisdom on this matter by simply observing the natural world, which operates on principles of ruthless efficiency and sustainability. A mother bird will not endlessly shove food into the beak of a chick that refuses to open its mouth. The chick must participate in its own survival. A tree, through the slow, intelligent processes of nature, will not continue to send vital nutrients to a branch that consistently bears no fruit or leaves. That branch will be allowed to wither and die so that the rest of the tree can thrive. Nature does not do this out of malice or cruelty, but out of a deep, innate wisdom, an understanding that resources must be directed toward what is productive and life-affirming, or the entire system suffers. The chronically lazy person is often a master of justification, armed with a seemingly endless supply of excuses for their predicament. They will recount in vivid detail their difficult childhood, the string of bad luck that has dogged their steps, the unfair circumstances that have conspired against them, and it is crucial to acknowledge that some of this may very well be true. Life deals harsh hands to many, but the critical question you must learn to ask for their sake and your own is not what happened to you, but what are you doing about it right now? Are they taking any steps, however small and faltering, to change their situation? Or are they simply waiting, with a sense of passive entitlement, for a deus ex machina to descend and fix everything for them? When you consistently help someone who demonstrates a steadfast refusal to help themselves, you are not a benefactor. You are a thief. You are robbing them of something profoundly precious and necessary for their development. You rob them of the deep internal satisfaction that comes from personal accomplishment, the pride of looking at a problem and saying, "I figured this out." You rob them of the resilient strength that is only built by overcoming difficulty, the kind of strength that comes from knowing you have survived past trials and can therefore survive future ones. Most tragically, you rob them of the most empowering discovery a human can make, the realization of their own inherent capability and resourcefulness. Many of you reading this have been carrying people like this for years, perhaps even decades. You have paid their bills, solved their crises, soothed their anxieties, and cleaned up their messes, both literal and metaphorical. And with every intervention, you have told yourself a story about your own kindness, reinforcing your identity as a good person. But I implore you to consider a more difficult, yet potentially liberating question. What if your kindness is actually a form of enabling that is keeping them weak? What if your help, offered with a loving heart, is the very impediment standing between them and the development of their own 2 feet, their own backbone, their own will to survive and thrive? For the chronically lazy person, comfort is the enemy of growth. They need to feel the genuine pangs of hunger, not the metaphorical kind, but the real discomfort that comes from an unmet need. They need to experience the natural, logical consequences of their own inaction and choices. It is a hard truth of human psychology that change rarely occurs when we are comfortable. It is only when the pain of staying the same, the misery of passivity, the shame of dependency, becomes greater than the perceived pain of change, the effort of work, the fear of failure, that a human being will finally find the motivation to move. Your help by alleviating that necessary pain, postpones that critical tipping point indefinitely. The second type to be wary of is the perpetually ungrateful. Have you ever encountered someone who can receive an extraordinary gift? Your time, your money, your emotional support, a significant sacrifice, and treat it as if it were nothing more than their due. A trivial event unworthy of note or acknowledgement. You could offer them the shirt off your back on a cold day, and they would complain about the color or the fabric, never once thanking you for the warmth. This behavior is not a simple lapse in etiquette. It is a profound character flaw, a window into a soul that has lost its connection to the interconnectedness of life. Gratitude is far more than good manners or social politeness. It is the hallmark of a mature spirit, the sign of a person who recognizes they are part of a vast, interdependent web of existence. A grateful heart understands on a fundamental level that every blessing, every act of kindness, every gift, large or small, is not a debt owed to them, but a grace given freely by another. This understanding breeds a sense of humility and reverence. Gifts are received with a sense of wonder and a desire to pay that goodness forward. The ungrateful person operates from a completely different paradigm, one of entitlement. They believe at their core that the world owes them comfort, success, and assistance. This creates a strange and painful paradox that anyone who has tried to help such a person will recognize. The more you pour into them, the less they seem to appreciate it. Your generosity does not breed thankfulness. It fuels expectation. Your sacrifices do not inspire reciprocity. They inflate their sense of entitlement. It is as if you are trying to fill a leaky bucket. No matter how much water you pour in, the level never rises, and you are left exhausted and holding an empty vessel. The recipient remains unchanged, their inner void untouched by your offerings, while you are diminished. I recall a story of a man who, out of profound compassion, helped a close friend pay his rent for 6 consecutive months. Month after month, he sacrificed his own discretionary income, foregoing pleasures and comforts to ensure his friend had a roof over his head. This was no small sacrifice. It represented a significant investment of his resources and a genuine act of love. And how did the friend respond? He did not respond with gratitude. Instead, he complained. He lamented that the apartment was too small, that the neighborhood was not up to his standards, that he had to live in such conditions while others seemed to have more. Not a single thank you passed his lips. When the 6-month period ended and the man, for his own financial stability, could no longer continue the payments, the friend's reaction was not one of understanding but of sheer indignation. He felt betrayed, as if the monthly help was not a generous gift, but a contractual obligation that was now being unfairly revoked. This is the definitive nature of the perpetually ungrateful. They do not perceive kindness as kindness. They perceive it as weakness to be exploited. They do not see generosity as a virtue. They see it as an opportunity to acquire more. They will continue to take until you have nothing left to give, and then they will blame you for your emptiness. When you extend help to an ungrateful person, you are not a gardener planting seeds in fertile soil, expecting future growth and bloom. You are standing at the edge of a bottomless pit, throwing your most precious resources into a darkness that will never be illuminated, a void that can never be filled. No amount of giving will ever satiate their hunger, because their hunger is not for things, but for an external validation of their own misguided sense of entitlement, a validation that the world can never provide. Your help merely confirms their destructive illusion. The third archetype is the arrogant and self-righteous individual. These are people who, fundamentally, do not want your help. They want your validation. They are not seeking your wisdom to broaden their perspective. They are seeking your endorsement to confirm what they already believe to be true. Their minds are not open forums for discussion, but fortified castles. And if you dare to offer a perspective that challenges the foundation of their keep, you will be met not with curiosity but with rejection, scorn, or defensive argumentation. The arrogant person's primary ailment is not a lack of intelligence or information. It is a surplus of pride. They are convinced on a deep level that they already possess the answers, that their way of thinking, their methodology, their worldview is the correct one. Anyone who presents a contradictory idea is, by their logic, simply mistaken or misinformed. This pride is a cunning impostor. It masquerades confidently as self-assurance and conviction, but at its core, it is actually fueled by a deep-seated terror, the fear of being wrong, of being exposed as fallible or ignorant. For the arrogant individual, their entire sense of self-worth and identity is precariously built upon the foundation of being right. To admit they don't know something, to acknowledge they need guidance or help, is to trigger a catastrophic collapse of this carefully constructed identity. The prospect is so terrifying that their psyche defends against it at all costs. They double down on their beliefs, they defend their positions with increasing fervor, they argue, and they ultimately reject the helper. To accept help would be to acknowledge a flaw, and that is a psychological impossibility. Even the most profound spiritual teachers understood this dynamic. There are accounts of Jesus, for instance, walking away from certain individuals and communities who were entrenched in their own self-righteousness. He did not chase after them, begging them to see the light. He did not compromise his message to make it more palatable to their pride. He presented the truth, and when it was met with arrogant rejection, he simply moved on to those who had ears to hear. This was not a lack of compassion, but a supreme understanding of a spiritual law. You cannot force wisdom upon a soul that is fiercely committed to its own foolishness. The soil of their heart must be prepared through experience before it can receive the seed. The arrogant person, therefore, must often fall. They must experience the tangible, undeniable consequences of their own prideful decisions. They must hit the ground of reality with a force hard enough to crack the shell of their certainty. They must find themselves in a situation that their own knowledge and their own way cannot extract them from. Only then, in that moment of humility, in that state of being broken open, does the possibility for genuine learning and receiving emerge. The helper who intervenes too early only prevents this necessary and transformative collapse. The fourth type requires careful discussion, the habitually wicked. In our modern age, we are often uncomfortable with such stark moralistic language. We prefer softer, more clinical terms: troubled, damaged, misinformed, products of their environment. While understanding and context are important, we must also have the courage to acknowledge that there are people in this world who are not merely confused or misguided. They operate with a conscious awareness and a repeated commitment to harmful actions. The wicked person is not defined by a single mistake. We all stumble and fall. They are defined by a pattern, a chosen pathway of behavior where lying, cheating, manipulation, and causing harm to others is done without genuine remorse. When you confront a habitually wicked person about their actions, you do not typically see repentance or a desire to change. Instead, you are met with justification, blame shifting, and rationalization. They have constructed an internal narrative where their actions are always someone else's fault, a necessary response to a cruel world. When you extend help to a person on this path, you must understand that you are not acting as a healer. You are becoming an unwitting accomplice. You are providing them with resources, be it money, emotional support, or social cover, that they will use to continue their destructive patterns. There is a reason why ancient wisdom traditions across various cultures contain clear warnings against supporting those who actively choose to do evil. This is not born from a lack of compassion for the sinner, but from a profound understanding of the nature of evil itself. It is parasitic and consumptive. It is not because these individuals are beyond redemption in the cosmic sense, but because the process of their redemption cannot begin while they are still being empowered in their wickedness. Your attempt to help them only fuels their destructive engine. The wicked person rarely wants to be saved from their path. They want to be empowered on it. They are not looking for a guide to lead them out of the darkness. They are looking for a financier for their schemes, a confidant for their lies, a cleaner for their messes. If you willingly or unknowingly step into any of these roles, you are not lifting them up. You are being pulled down. You are not partnering in their salvation. You are partnering with the darkness that currently holds them, and that darkness will not hesitate to consume your light as its fuel. The fifth archetype is the incurably foolish. It is critical to differentiate a fool from someone of low intelligence. A fool is not necessarily unintelligent. A fool is someone who possesses a profound and stubborn refusal to learn from experience. They are the individuals who make the same catastrophic mistakes over and over again, who ignore sound advice from every quarter, who touch the hot stove of life repeatedly, and then cry out in surprise and victimhood when they are burned yet again. The distinction between a wise person and a fool is beautifully simple. The wise person learns from their experiences and the experiences of others, while the fool does not learn even from their own. This type is particularly difficult to deal with because they often present in a state of genuine, palpable crisis. They will come to you with tears in their eyes, their life in apparent shambles, and your every humane instinct will scream at you to rush to their aid. However, if you pause to look at their personal history with clear eyes, you will almost certainly see a repeating pattern. This is not their first time in this exact predicament. It is likely the third, fifth, or 10th time. And each previous time, someone, perhaps you, came to their rescue. And each time, once the immediate crisis was averted, they returned to the very same behaviors that manufactured the crisis in the first place. The fool in crisis is like a person drowning in a stormy sea, who is actively refusing to grab the life preserver you are throwing to them. Instead, they thrash and flail, swallowing water and pulling under anyone who gets too close. If you, in a heroic but misguided impulse, jump into the water to save them physically, they will latch on to you in their panic, their desperate, unthinking movements threatening to pull you both beneath the waves. You cannot save a person who will not cooperate with their own salvation. You cannot force a lesson on a mind that has closed its doors. The only teacher capable of breaking through the stubbornness of the incurable fool is life itself, the unyielding, impersonal, and consistent application of consequences. The fool must be allowed to experience the full, unmitigated impact of their poor choices. If you keep intervening, softening the blow, bailing them out, you are like a parent who never lets their child skin their knee. You are preventing the natural feedback mechanism that teaches caution, foresight, and responsibility. Your intervention, however loving its intent, is a disservice that perpetuates their cycle of folly. The sixth type, and perhaps the most dangerously subtle, is the Master Manipulator. This individual is a chameleon of human psychology, and they are so effective because they do not present as a villain. They do not make crude demands. They craft compelling stories. They do not take from you by force. They skillfully arrange circumstances so that you feel compelled, even privileged, to give to them. They possess an intuitive, albeit often unconscious, understanding of human nature, and they know that good. Kind-hearted people are driven by a desire to help and are often plagued by guilt when they consider saying no. The manipulator is a psychological shapeshifter. They will tell you exactly what you most need to hear to open your heart and your wallet. They will play on your sympathies, your ego, your sense of duty, or your fears. With one person, they are the helpless victim of a cruel world. With another, they are the misunderstood hero, bravely fighting against impossible odds. Their story is not fixed. It is fluid, changing its contours to fit the audience. If you were to compare notes with others who have been enmeshed in their web, you would discover wild inconsistencies and outright contradictions in their narratives. When you provide help to a master manipulator, you are not assisting a person in genuine need. You are becoming a resource for a sophisticated, self-serving system. You are providing the fuel that allows their manipulative games to continue. You are an actor who has been cast in a play they wrote, and you are following a script designed entirely for their benefit. The moment your usefulness wanes, or the moment your eyes are opened and you see through the performance, the manipulator will not thank you for your past help. They will turn on you. You will be swiftly recast from the role of benefactor to the role of the villain, the one who never really understood or failed them in their hour of need. Finally, the seventh archetype is the unrepentant rebel. This is the person who knows what is right, but actively, consistently chooses what is wrong. They are not ignorant. They have been taught, warned, counseled, and corrected by life and by loved ones. They understand the potential consequences of their path intellectually, but they do not care. They have made a conscious, defiant choice to continue down a destructive road, and no amount of pleading, logic, or emotional appeal from you will alter their course. Theirs is a rebellion not of ignorance, but of will. The unrepentant individual is perhaps the most heartbreaking to release because you can often see their immense potential shining like a beacon through their damaging behavior. You can see the brilliant, kind, successful person they could become if they would only make different choices. This vision of their potential can become a trap for you, a siren song that keeps you invested, hoping and believing that this time, after this one last rescue, they will finally see the light and change. But they never do. Your hope becomes the chain that binds you to their sinking ship. The fundamental truth with the unrepentant is that they must want their own healing more than you want it for them. They must fight for their own freedom with more ferocity than you can muster on their behalf. You cannot borrow willpower for another person. You cannot lend them your desire for a better life. If you try, you will find yourself in a futile tug of war, exhausting your emotional and spiritual reserves while they remain, steadfastly, exactly where they are. Your desperate efforts to save them only drain you, leaving you with nothing to offer yourself or others who are truly ready and willing to receive help. So, after this long catalog of draining archetypes, what is the ultimate conclusion? Do we wall off our hearts, become cynical and indifferent, and retreat from the world? Absolutely not. The answer is not less love but more wisdom. The answer is discernment. We must learn, with practice and patience, to recognize the subtle and not-so-subtle differences between a person who is in a temporary struggle and one who is permanently stuck in a destructive pattern. We must cultivate the ability to distinguish between the one who needs a genuine hand up to get back on their feet and the one who is looking for a permanent carrying service. True compassion. The highest form of love is not synonymous with enabling. In fact, sometimes the most compassionate action you can take is the one that feels the most difficult in the moment. To step back, to withhold help, and to allow someone you care about to face the full, unsoftened consequences of their own choices. It is a profound act of faith, faith in their ultimate resilience, faith in the curriculum of their soul, and faith that the universe has a way of teaching lessons that we, as mere humans, are ill-equipped to impart. It is often only through direct encounter with difficulty, through the hardship they have courted, through the painful impact of hitting rock bottom, that a person is finally jolted awake from their destructive slumber. Think of your energy, your time and your emotional resources as precious seeds. When you plant these seeds in good, fertile soil, in the life of someone who is receptive, responsible, and ready to grow, you will see a return on your investment. You will see fruit, their progress, their happiness, their independence. This is the reward of wise giving. But when you tirelessly cast your seeds onto barren, rocky ground, into the lives of those who are lazy, ungrateful, arrogant, wicked, foolish, manipulative, or unrepentant, you will see only waste. Your efforts will be swallowed up without a trace of growth, leaving you depleted and the land no richer. Your life energy is a sacred trust. Your time on this earth is finite and non-renewable. Your capacity for love, while vast, is not bottomless. You must become a wise steward of these treasures. This means making conscious, sometimes difficult choices about where you invest them. Understanding that not everyone deserves your help is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of profound wisdom and ultimate self-respect. It is how you ensure that you have enough light left in your own lantern to guide your path and to illuminate the way for those who are truly ready to walk beside you. Therefore, I urge you to ask yourself these challenging questions today. Who am I currently helping out of a sense of obligation or misguided love? Whom I should, for both our sakes, learn to let go? Who am I repeatedly rescuing from crises that are of their own making? Who needs to be allowed to fall so they can learn how to get back up? Who am I enabling with my constant support? Who needs to finally feel the full weight of their own responsibilities and choices? Sit with these questions. Be brutally honest with yourself. And when you find the answers, find the courage to act. Step back, create that boundary. Say no, not with anger, bitterness, or resentment in your heart, but with a calm, clear understanding that you are performing an act of tough love. You are doing it to protect your own sacred energy, and paradoxically, you are doing it for them. You are giving them the greatest gift you can offer someone who is resistant to growth, the gift of their own experience. You are allowing them to encounter their own life, directly and without your filter, because in the final analysis you cannot save anyone. You cannot walk their path for them. You can only point the way, share the wisdom you have earned, and keep your own light burning brightly. Whether they choose to walk that path toward the light is, and always has been, a choice that rests entirely and solely with them.